alternativas al Beluga.
With the Beluga out of the question, we looked at everything we could think of that could carry such a load. First off, we thought of using airships to carry the parts, but the technology wasn't quite ready. We also looked at helicopters, but they wouldn't have enough payload for our purposes.
The team even studied carrying the wings piggyback style on another plane. But after wind tunnel tests, they decided the aerodynamics would be too risky.
So we decided to forget about air transportation and concentrate instead on using the sea, which we thought should work well.
Jesus and his team devised a system that uses roads, rivers and the sea in a logistical dance that has to fit together perfectly and work first time. The fuselage, wings and tailplanes will set off by sea from the factories in Germany, Wales, France and Spain, converging on the port of Pauillac on the west coast of France. From there, they'll be loaded onto barges that will carry them 59 miles up the River Garonne, and still the journey is not complete. A fleet of lorries will haul the parts by road the last 152 miles to Toulouse. Bob Burden is the man who has to coordinate the schedule. There will be many late nights ahead.
Many of us are burning the midnight oil in very long days at the moment, and life seems to exist around work at the moment.
Airbus have commissioned a £22 million ship from China to carry the parts, but it won't be ready for the first transports. Instead, they've hired a general-purpose cargo vessel to ship the first fuselage components from Hamburg. But even that is having problems. They've discovered a 3-foot crack in the rudder and must repair it before the 30 tons of aeroplane can get underway.
It's always the same. Whenever you have a new program, there are obstacles to overcome. But at the moment, it's stressful for all the people here because we're at the sharp end at the moment.
The repairs stretch long into the night. As ever, the clock is ticking. Early the next morning, and the first finished fuselage sections of the biggest airliner the world has ever seen emerge into the light of day. The parts are carried on purpose-built, radio-controlled, self-powered low loaders. Each one has 96 wheels and can travel at a maximum speed of only 6 miles per hour. The factory is just a few hundred yards from the purpose-built dock where the cargo ship waits. Engineers finally finished welding the rudder at 3 o'clock the previous morning. And now is the time for these outsized parts to start their 970-mile journey by sea. They're going to have to make good speed if they're to recover the time lost to the delay. In Britain, another early start as another massive plant is about to release the components built within its cavernous interior. Gareth Williams is in charge of the operation. For him, today is a big day.
After the last 2 months of preparation, the previous 2 years of planning, we've actually got the moment now when the wing's going. So it's an exciting time, and it's what people here have looked for many, many months.
Stage 1 of this 1,000-mile trip is to get the wing from the factory to the nearby River Dee, where the giant piece will be loaded onto a barge. Again, a low loader is used, but this one is modified. It has to pass over a narrow railway bridge, and to prevent a collision, a special guide wire has been built into the road to ensure the low loader doesn't hit the bridge. As the low loader approaches, they're depending on the system to work. If all goes to plan, the clearance will be a matter of inches. The high-tech system works, and the next phase is to load the wing onto the barge. Now, the dangerous tides on this treacherous stretch of river are their biggest headache.
It's not to be messed with, this river.
The tide's important because downstream there are 3 low bridges, and beyond them lie constantly shifting sandbanks. Sail when the tide is too high, and the barge will hit the bridge. Wait for it to fall, and they could easily run aground.
There's a real balancing act as to where you get off the blocks and get under the bridge.
Graham Harwood, the barge captain, has been studying the river for the last 4 months. He's planning on clearing the first and lowest bridge by just 19 inches.
We've got to have half a metre clearance under a bridge, so the timing is of the essence, like, you know.
Neither is this the best time of the month, with the current flowing particularly fast.
They haven't picked the right time for us, because the tide is making probably about 5 knots. And, you know, we've got to compete with that later on. So, not the best time of year, not the best tide, for the first time it's been done. But I'm sure we'll manage it. We'll have to.
At last, the wing is gently maneuvered onto the barge and the low loader carefully retracted. It's time to put all the theory into practice. The crew constantly monitor the clearance under the bridge. As they approach, they realize the strong wind is holding the tide back. They might hit the bridge too soon.
You need to slow it down a bit.
So Graham holds off for a few more seconds.
Yeah, there it is. Look, look.
I thought it was ringing, and it's taller than they say it is.
Look now. Hey, I tell you what. That is nice. That is beautiful. Isn't that beautiful? Exactly 50 centimetres. Exactly.
Graham has judged it perfectly, cutting it fine under the bridges, so he has plenty of water under his keel for the remaining 13 miles of river. Now he can rely on his knowledge of the river's channels and navigate to the transfer point where the cargo will be unloaded and put aboard another ship for the 630-mile voyage across the open sea to the west coast of France. So far, so good, and the incredibly complex transportation system appears to be functioning just as planned. The fuselage sections from Germany have been at sea for 3 days and are now approaching their destination. The wings, once loaded onto their ship, travel through the Irish Sea and across the Bay of Biscay, aided by near-perfect weather. Yet more fuselage components come from Saint-Nazaire in France. All these massive parts are headed for the port of Pauillac, where the next phase will begin. First to arrive are the German fuselage parts. Here the ship's Russian captain, feeling protective of his cargo, gets angry with the French dock workers for not being careful enough.
What is this? This is a very important job.
Using yet more low loaders, the parts are soon transferred onto barges and begin a 59-mile journey up the picturesque river Garonne. The trip takes in the ancient city of Bordeaux and its historic bridge, the 180-year-old Pont de Pierre. Here again, the clearance is minimal,